In this free preview video, you'll get to watch the first hour of our Total Python course. This gives you a chance to start learning and also see what style of teaching we provide to make sure this is the right course for you. Click the link in the description to get the full course for a discounted rate. There's really no better course and no better deal to start learning Python. I hope you enjoy this class, and we'll see you inside. Welcome. This is where your journey begins. Take a selfie and save it with the title, My Last Day Without Knowing Anything About Python, because learning is a one-way trip. My name is Phil Ebener, and I will be your partner in this adventure. I am convinced that without fun, there is no learning. So we are going to face this journey as friends who have a great time working together. Before we start, we are going to ask you to take a few minutes so we can show you how your path is going to be during the next few days. Today, on day one, you're going to learn some of the Python philosophy. You're going to install all the software needed for the rest of the course, and you're going to learn your first commands, the basic ones, which are enough for you to be able to write your very first program at the end of this day. From tomorrow until day 6, you will go through the basic training phase. These days are going to play a key role in your development because you are going to learn the basics of Python, which is what every programmer should know. Everything you learn in the future will be based on what you learn during your first few days. On day 7, you are going to enter the advanced phase. You're going to understand the philosophy of object-oriented programming, which spearheads all modern programming and allows us to have all the Python resources to create agile, robust, economical, and repeatable and easy to maintain programs. At the end of day 10 of this intensive training, you will be ready to be a Python programmer because you will know everything an up-to-date programmer knows, and you will have accumulated many hours of real-world practice. You will only lack experience that comes with time. From day 11 onwards, the expert phase will start. When you get there, you will already be a Python programmer, and it will be the time to get to know its main applications in the real world. Each day, you will delve into areas of development such as machine learning, social network integration, blockchain, and much, much more. I remind you that this course is strongly based on real-world practice. Each day, you will complete it by creating a full program from scratch, and all lessons will be accompanied by 3 practical code exercises and a downloadable document with a summary of the topic. As a result, you can store all this in writing and have everything you have learned nearby in order to build your own Python manual. On top of that, each video includes a theoretical introduction and a practical demonstration. Additionally, at the end of each day, you will have a quiz to review and reinforce everything you've learned. It's a time to reflect, summarize, and celebrate some of your achievements each day. We are so ready. All this amazing content is waiting for you to start on the next lecture. Are you ready? Then hit that play button to go to the next lecture right now. I know you're eager to start programming, but just give me a minute so I can explain why Python is the best programming language you can learn, and how we're going to make it super easy for you to learn in this class. The main advantage is that Python is classified as a high-level language, and this means that its instructions are close as possible to human language, which makes it easier to learn and ideal for people who are just starting out in the world of programming. However, just because it is easier to learn does not mean that it is less powerful. Quite the opposite. In Python, you can perform tasks with a few lines of code, while in other programming languages, this would take hundreds of lines. This enables your productivity to go up. On the other hand, it is one of the most versatile programming languages that exists and can be used in a variety of fields. In other words, it allows you to program from video games to websites and mobile applications and much, much more. In addition to all this, there is a large community behind Python, which means that there are a multitude of libraries, this would mean blocks of codes, that are available for you to use in your programs to do almost anything. This means you can take them and solve more complex issues that are not relevant to your project. You simply use the libraries and move on. As I told you, Python was created to make its code readable, to be as close as possible to the human language. That's why I will help you learn it smoothly and to make it feel natural, like having a daily conversation, but with your machine. Then, writing or reading Python will be something super logical and understandable for you at the end of this course. I hope you are ready and as motivated as I am, because in the next few minutes, you will actually begin programming. Every day throughout this course, you will end up creating a program that can be applied in real life. And this first day will be no exception. You are going to create a program that will help a user create a clever and original name for a beer brand. Well, actually, it could be used to create a brand name for any kind of product, but we are going to think about a name for beer, just for now. Keep in mind, however, the first programs you create, like today, will not be super flashy with a nice interface. Until we get more coding skills, the outcome of your first programs will be pure code on a black screen that returns a cold and dry result. As you advance, you will be adding functionalities so that your programs are effective as well as attractive. To learn how to program the goal we have set today, you must first do a few things, such as installing Python on your computer, installing PyCharm, which is the software we will use to work with Python. And to create the first program, you need to learn a set of tools like the print statement, strings, concatenation, and the input function. I'll be waiting for you in the next lesson so that we can get started together. For this lesson, we are going to install the software you need to write your code. And remember, Python is a language, like English or Spanish, so you can write it anywhere, in a notebook, on a whiteboard, on a computer, on a wall, and it's always going to be the same language. In the same way, there is a wide variety of applications for writing Python code, and each one offers advantages and disadvantages. We call these applications IDEs, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. So these applications are virtual environments that integrate all of Python's functionalities so that you can develop code in them. Because actually, if you want, you can write your code in a simple notepad and it would still be Python. But a good IDE does things like assisting you with code structure, helping you to detect, resolve, and debug errors, running simulations, and more. In other words, a good IDE makes your life as a programmer much easier. So it's time to choose one. We have to. And there are so many options. I don't want to decide for you, but I am going to give you my recommendation on which IDE to use to learn Python in this course, since it is also the one we are going to be using throughout the course on screen, and it's called PyCharm. We use it because it's powerful, its interface is simple, its help system is very clear and complete, and well, because it's the one we actually have to use in real life. But before you install PyCharm, you need to install Python on your computer. I'll leave you in Federico's hands, who will guide you throughout this process. So let's go and do that.
Thank you, Phil, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to install both Python and PyCharm on your computer, and we're going to do it all together so there won't be any problems. The first thing you're going to do is go to the python.org site, where you have all the documentation, the software, and much more. It's the official Python site. Of course, at the time you log in, it may look a little different than it does in my case. This is always being updated, so don't worry. but you will surely find a link that says download, in which you will find that the system recognizes your operating system. In my case, Windows. And here I have the newest, most current version that exists on Python so far. You may see a newer version. So let's click here to start the download, which is already being done on my system. What I do is click here to bring up the runner. We click on run and I've got some options here. The first thing we're going to do in this window is make sure that the add Python 3.1 checkbox is checked to the path. So we're going to click here and then install now. And we're going to then start installing it. So as you can see, it's done very quickly. It takes practically nothing, and in a couple of seconds we already have all the code and all the libraries and all the stuff we need so that our computer can understand the Python language. So a few seconds more and we have it ready. And so we get to this window that tells us that the installation has been successful. It may appear below in this blank space here, a warning that allows you to choose if you want to disable path length limit. If that appears, please enable it, and then you are ready to hit finish here. And now I've installed Python on my computer. If you are a Mac user, don't worry, the process will be quite similar to this one. Quite intuitive to follow, and you won't have any complications. If you do have any questions, please leave them for me in the Q&A area. So now we're going to install PyCharm. We're going to go to the Google page to search for it here. Note that we are going to do it now is install the software or IDE that we are going to use throughout the program as an interface to program with Python. Here you will simply search for PyCharm, and surely the first option that will appear is this, PyCharm, the Python IDE for developers. You can come here or directly to download PyCharm, and it will take us to the official PyCharm site. It is coming here. Note that I'll also leave this link for you in the lecture resources if you want to access it directly from there. And here we have two options to install, either the professional version or the community version. We're going to choose the community, which on the one hand is free and has everything we need to work with Python at a high level. Professional has some more features, it has cost. You can try it for free and see if it works for you. But to start working with Python and start learning it, with the community you'll be more than satisfied. A few more things on this site before we move on to what's next is that you can see the system requirements here. You must meet all these for PyCharm to work well on your computer. The installation instructions, which is basically download it and run it and nothing else. So let's go here to download. And here it starts to install the PyCharm installation runner on my computer. And once it's done downloading, we can click on the installer. So this is going to start the installer running. We actually choose run, and this is going to be pretty intuitive and easy to follow. We choose next, then we leave the default path, or choose another one if you want. I recommend to leave this one. So we go to next, and here the only thing we can add if we want is the desktop icon. We click here and nothing else. The rest, check it, but I would leave it as it is. We do next, then install, and now, yes, in a few minutes we have PyCharm installed. And once this software has been installed on your computer, this window appears confirming it. So you can click here to run it now, but let's show you how to open it. It's very simple. We do finish, and then now you can look for the icon on your desktop, or come to the Windows system icon. You will find here PyCharm Community Edition. We click on it and it will open for the first time as we run this program. The first time it will ask us if we're going to import the PyCharm settings. We're going to leave it in do not import, so that it opens as it comes by default. And this will be the welcome screen where I'm going to change something before we continue, which is going to be the customize and personalize. So here you can choose what kind of interface you want in terms of color scheme. And dark colour is perhaps the nicest because it's dark. It allows your eyes to be relaxed and not disturbed by the garish colours. We also have this combination which is whiter, brighter. But it may not be the most pleasant to work with at night especially, but during the course I'm going to use this high contrast one. While it's not the nicest of them all, but because it's quite garish, I think it's the one that is the best contrast to show you all the functions and text on the screen as I work on my computer. So I recommend dark colour, but you can choose any option you like. So here you can increase the font size of our software, not the text of the code. We will see that later. But if I set, for example, 18, this enlarges the whole size in which you can see the letters. I think this is a bit too much. I'm going to leave it at 14. For my taste, it's going to be fine. And you have more options here, but with this, to start with, it's going to be fine. We can go to projects. Then here you are going to choose if you're going to work with a new project or if you're going to see a project that you've already started. I'm going to show you how to create a new project in this lecture, so you'll be able to start in the next lecture. So we click on the plus, and then when we come to this, the first screen, which is the one you'll see whenever you want to create a new project. And a project is going to have a lot of Python files because you can create a lot of code which interacts with each other, and then you decide where you're going to save that project. By default, here it gives you a path. I'm going to work with a folder that I'm going to create on my desktop, directly to work much more comfortably there. So we open my computer, we're going to go to desktop, and this is where I'm going to create my folder. Of course, I'm going to name it because right now my folder doesn't exist yet. We do it with the backslash, and we're going to name it Python. Nothing more than that. You can leave the rest as it is to start with. You'll learn later what each of these options is for. But for starters, we're good to go. So we're going to click create, and this is then we're going to take us to the first run of our software. You may get a message from Windows Defender at this point that says something like this regarding your computer's security. You can click directly on fix and that will resolve it. It's fine. It doesn't appear to me because I have already installed the software before. Like many softwares, this one also starts with the tip of the day. It's not really something I pay much interest to, so I'm going to ask you to stop showing me these tips and close and move on to running our first instance of PyCharm. So, and here we are in PyCharm, the proper PyCharm. I'm going to maximize it, and I'm going to ask you not to panic if it looks too complex what you're seeing. We're going to get to know this interface step by step as the course progresses. We're going to go from simple to complex, and you're going to master it without any fear. We're going to close this file that we have here that's called main, which is a class that's generated by default. So you'll see this a little bit less overloaded. Our interface has a column here where we're going to be looking at some options. This can be hidden or shown again because it's not the core of our work. Everything important is going to happen in this larger area here, which is where we're going to write our code. The rest are all tools for working on our code. So we're going to concentrate on this area primarily. We're going to learn what's here in the menu bar. We're going to learn some tools here that are very important. But for now, we're just going to stick with what we've opened in PyCharm, and we're going to create our first file inside the project that we've named Python, which is the folder that I created, remember? And here it is. So if I right click here, I have the option to choose new file. If I choose new file here, I have to name it. And I can name it, for example, first project. But I'll show you what's going to happen. When I hit accept here with enter, it's going to ask me to choose what kind of language it is that I want to have in this file. And I want it to be Python. So I can come here and choose Python and then start working here. So I have that option, and I have my first choice here. Open matching files in PyCharm, and then Python. But we're going to make it easier so you don't get too complicated. We're actually going to come to Python, right click new file. We could choose Python file here, and this would also save us that step. It opens a Python file directly. But if we put file as just now, and I want to put first project, so that it doesn't ask me later what kind of file I want, I just put .py. By putting it this way, I'm already telling it that I want to work with the Python language. We hit enter, and here is our first project created, with the first line ready and the cursor blinking for me to start typing. Are you looking forward to it? In the next lecture, we're going to start writing code. So thank you very much, and now we'll see you in the next lecture.
Finally, it's time to start writing. And we're going to start by learning how to use print, one of the most basic and common statements in Python. When we say print in Python, we don't mean print like on paper using a printer. We mean print on the screen. So print actually means to show, to display on the screen. And as I told you before, Python is a very simple language to understand. So if we want Python to display or print on a screen, a sentence like hello world, for example, we just say print hello world. As you can see, the print structure is very simple. The keyword print, and then we put in parentheses whatever we want to print. If it is text, it will go between quotation marks. And there can be double or single quotation marks. It doesn't matter. If they are numbers or other functions, then we do it without quotation marks. But don't worry about that because we are going to deal with this later. For now, let's go to PyCharm with Federico so that we can learn together how to use the word print to write your first text.
And so, it's time to write our first line of code. We're in PyCharm, we have our space here to write. We're going to enlarge it by clicking here in Project, so that this column folds out and we can see more clearly our space to write code. We're going to begin to use the statement print, so we write it directly. After typing print, here you can see that we get a help that tells us that print is followed by the bracket signs, and inside we can put values. These helpers are very useful. It shows them for PyCharm all the time. If you come to the points and click, you will see that you can sort by name, but the most important thing is that you have a quick documentation or a quick definition, and these are very useful when you're working with code that is starting to get a little bit complicated. But for now, let's stick with print. We're going to open the brackets, and we said that we are going to write a text. We're going to write with quotation marks whatever is inside. And what we are going to put here is the expression hello world. With this, it will be enough so that when we execute it, we can see that hello world is printed on the screen. But first I want you to notice the colours. As you can see, print is written in blue because it is a key word. Then the brackets appear in a different colour so you can easily identify when the content of print begins and ends. And the content, the text we have entered, is in green. Then what follows is to run this program to see what appears in console. To run it, we're going to come here to run. And it gives us a choice whether which file we want to run. Main was the file that appeared at the beginning, which is generated automatically. It is not the one we want to run. The one we want to run is first project. So once we choose it, the console appears here and it shows us the path of this file. Then the result of the execution of our program that shows us hello world. And here it simply says that it has finished executing the code. So it has already exited the execution. It's very simple. It only has one command. It says hello world. So I want you to notice what happens if I change something with respect to the quotation marks. Let's say I remove the last quotation mark. In that case, you can see now that everything is green and it marks a serious error. This time it is in red because not having told Python when the text ended, it thought that the brackets were part of the text and included it. So there it is marking an error. It is normal that this can happen frequently, or that you forget the brackets. For example, it will also warn you and that you would be the most common of errors for this type of text. In fact, if we want to execute it without the quotation marks, let's suppose that we have not seen the error that announces us, and we go to execute. This time we can do it from here because first project has already been loaded and we can click here on run. Well, the result now is no longer hello world. It is a syntax error. This is how you're going to read the errors when they appear. You're going to see what kind of error you have, and we can actually see in the example of our text that is marking us here that this up arrow, where the error is apparently located. So PyCharm is quite clever at helping us solve our code problems. So we return the quotes and now our code is back to normal. Note that in print you can write whatever you want. And some considerations, if you wanted to write something with quotes, for example, hello world, I say hello, and I want to put it like that, with quotes. Well, what problem am I going to have here? That when I want a quotation mark to appear in my text, unfortunately Python is going to misinterpret these quotation marks, and it's going to think that I'm ending the text here, and that I start again here, and this hello doesn't understand it. It marks it as an error. It's not a word that Python understands. So when you want to put quotation marks inside your text, we can use single quotation marks, and Python will differentiate from the double quotation marks and understand that they are simply part of the text. You can also do the other way around. Put single quotes outside and double quotes inside. For text interpretation purposes, it is the same thing. So if I run this now, you'll see that it says, "Hello world, I say hello." Print, as I explained, can print not only text, but also numbers, and here I can put 100 if I run it. What will come out here is the number 100. And the numbers do not need quotation marks. It will print them as they are. You can also actually print operations. If I put in 100 plus 50 and run this, that's going to come out here as 150. If I wanted the operation to show, I could have put quotation marks at the beginning, quotation marks at the end, show it as text, and then we see 100 plus 50, and not the result. When you put numbers without the quotation marks, directly what print does is to execute the operation that it finds inside. This is all to start with working with print. So I thank you again for joining us in this lecture, and we will learn a little bit more about this in the next.
Welcome to the strings lecture. In the previous lecture, we learned how to print data on the screen using the print statement. And as we saw, we can use it for any kind of information, numbers, text, variables, and many more things. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You have seen only text and numbers so far. In Python, there are many types of data, and we will see them throughout this course. But let's start with the data known as string, which is nothing more than text strings. That's what we'll focus on in this lesson. They are called text strings because in reality, a string is a string of characters. For example, the word hello is a string composed by the letters H, E, L, L, and O. And this is important since it is how Python is going to process our text. That's why we use quotation marks every time we write a string, to clearly inform where our string starts and ends. Another important feature is that strings can contain not only letters, but also numbers or special characters. But even so, everything in a string will be considered as text. White spaces, special signs, punctuation, and even mathematical operators and numbers. While they're inside the quotes, they will not be treated mathematically, and you will not be able to do operations with them, since they will be treated as text characters. I say right now you follow Federico, head over to PyCharm, and learn in a little bit more depth.
And here we are again in PyCharm to see how strings work. We have already seen that a string is a text string enclosed in quotes. We can put it inside of print to print or display on the screen a certain text. As I explained a few seconds ago, what we have here, although they are numbers and there is a plus sign, and you might think that this is an operation, this is actually a string because it is in quotes and therefore the console does not interpret it as an operation. And the result it gives us is not 150, it gives us the expression 100 plus 50. Remember that we would have to remove the quotation marks so that it actually returns a numerical operation. But let's continue with the strings. Strings can not only be described as a sequence of characters, as we've seen so far, but also several sequences of characters, and put them together or join them in what we call a concatenation. So here I'm going to type Fedi, for example. I'm going to execute this. And here we see in the console that it says Fedi. And this is very simple, but I could add here before another expression that says hello. We close the quotation marks, we put a plus between both expressions, both are with different quotation marks, the first with double, the second with single quotation mark. This doesn't matter. And observe what is going to happen if we execute this. What you see is that it says hello Fede, but it actually says it all together, because if we look back up here to the print, I've joined two strings, but I haven't left any space in between them. I could solve this in three different ways. I could put a space here, and this, if we correct it, is going to say hello space Fede. We could also remove this space and put a space before the F in the second string, and this is going to work the same, as it still displays hello Fede. Or you could generate a space by creating a third string with nothing but an empty space. I'm getting an error here because there are two quotation marks. Okay, problem solved. And we have then a string that says hello, that is concentrated with a string that is empty, that has, well actually it's not empty, it has a blank space. And a third string that even though it has different quotes, it's going to be taken as a string anyway, and it says Fede. Also, if we execute this, we will have our hello Fede, which works exactly the same as the other two previous ways. So some other considerations for when you use the strings. I already showed you that if you want to show quotes inside a string, you do it by putting different quotation marks than the ones you've used to wrap that string. But there is also another alternative. Let's write here another phrase like, my name is Federico. That's it. Let's leave it like that. So it's giving me an error because I start with double quotes and end with single quotes. There, now that's corrected, and well, my name is Federico. Plus the closing brackets, and I might want to put Federico between quotes. I showed you that here I can solve it by putting single quotes, and that would solve it. But also if I wanted to put double quotes and use the double quotes outside, I have a special character which is the backslash. When you put a backslash, you are telling the code that the following character is not going to be taken as a character, but it is a special function or a textual character. So if I put double quotes here, Python paints it in a different colour, I want Federico to also end with the double quotes, so I put another backslash and then the quotes. So if I run this, I want you to observe how it looks in the console. My name is Federico, in double quotes. So the backslash tells Python, hey, the next character, don't take it as text, please take it as a special character. It can be to make it textual, as in this case, or for other functions like the ones I'm going to show you now. So we're going to delete all this, and we're going to put quotation marks, and we're going to say here, this is the one line, and this is another. You will say, that's bad writing, Freddy. We put everything in a row without leaving a space. So I want to show you how to write two lines in a row with the same print command. So let's put here the backslash, and then the letter N. The N is a special character that says new line. Then Python, when it reads this, will understand that it must insert a new line. Let's execute it and see that here we have. This is a line and this is another line, although it is all in one print. We could also continue writing if it's another different option, another command print below to which I'm going to put this is the third line. Between quotation marks, we execute it and it works in the same way. I can put this command in a separate print or with a backslash and N to require the Python compiler to generate a new line. Another character we can incorporate is the backslash with the letter T. The T stands for tabular. That is, adding a 4-character space before the next character. If I run this, we will see that this is the third line is separated by an indent, by a 4-character space, which is nothing more than if I had pressed the tab key. So, do we have any more options? Yes. We also have the possibility that when we want to write something, let's suppose I want to write, let's delete all this, let's open parentheses, let's write this text with single quotation marks, and I would like to put something with an apostrophe. For example, this isn't a number. And what happens? Isn't should have an apostrophe between the N and the T, which is written with the single quotation mark. But here's the problem. When I put the single quotation mark, having a single quotation mark is enclosing this text. Python said, you're ending the first text string. I don't understand this, and I don't know anything more. And that will give you an error. So then we also have the possibility of using, either putting double quotes outside and that solves it, or putting a backslash before the apostrophe. So remember, here we're telling Python the next character takes it as it is. It then understands that it is an apostrophe, which it should read as such, and that is not the enclosing quotation mark. So we executed, and this isn't a number was spelt correctly. One last lecture about the backslash is that sometimes you may want to write the following. This sign, the backslash, is a backslash. What if I want a backslash to appear in my text? Here I'm having an error because the backslash is an escape sign. Then Python will execute it in a very strange way. If we want a backslash to appear, what we have to do is after the backslash, type another backslash. So we're telling it the next character, that to this, the second slash, take it verbatim as is. So let's run this and see what we're going to see is this sign is an invaded slash. Many times you may need the slash to be part of your text. So thank you very much for joining me in this lecture about strings, and see you in the next one to continue learning much more.
Welcome to the lecture about the input function. So far, we have learned that we as programmers can display our information on the screen thanks to the print statement. But what if we want the end user of the program we are going to create to be able to enter their own information? There is a function to ask the user to type something and then be able to display that information or store it to do something with it. For example, if we want to ask for the user's name, we say, input your name. So the input structure is very simple. The keyword input, and then the explanation or request in parentheses, so that the user understands what he or she is expected to enter. This explanation must be in quotation marks, double or single, it doesn't matter. Hence, this responds to all characteristics of a string that we have learned in the previous lesson. And what is the system going to do with the information entered by the user? For now, it is going to retain it so that we can do something with it. In the next lectures, we will learn how to store this information to use it as we please later. However, in this lecture, we are going to learn how to print that information on the screen. How? Enclosing this input statement inside the print statement. Do you remember I told you that print can print not only text and numbers, but also functions? Well, what we are saying now is, please Python, print what the user enters after asking for his or her name. How about we go to PyCharm right now to see this in action?
So here we are in PyCharm, and we're going to start testing this input function. We're going to eliminate what we've had from before, and I'm going to show you first how it would work with print. So if I ask someone for their first name and then their last name, for example, I can put print. So we open the brackets and then we open the quotation marks, tell me your name. I'm going to put a colon and then a space so that the cursor is blinking one space away from the colon. Let's create the other line right here. Print, open the brackets and the quotation marks, tell me your last name, and also the colon, and leave it there. If I run this, I'm going to show you that also to make it faster, you don't need to go to the green triangle that we have here, or to the run and search. But we also have the keyboard shortcut Shift and F10. So we're going to do that. We're going to press Shift and F10 on the keyboard, and this makes it run automatically. And this just prints, tell me your name, tell me your last name. And here it says that the execution of our code is finished. In other words, I'm no longer in the code. If I want to write something here, I cannot. I'm trying to do it, and if it is not possible because the code has finished. How is this going to change when I write the input function here? So let's put it in both. Input, here as well. Now I have two input functions that, as you can see, what we put inside the brackets is the prompt. That is, a title that tells us the user what to type. So let's run this with Shift and F10, and notice that the difference is now it says, tell me your name. The system has not executed the end of the code. It hasn't even shown me the second line, the one that says tell me your last name, because now it's waiting for the user to do something, unlike print, which doesn't wait for the user to do anything. So I click here and I'm going to say my name is Federico. We hit enter. Then it asks for my last name. My last name is Garay. And when I hit enter, then the code ends. The system waits for me to do something and does not execute the following lines because input waits for an input, and this is very important to understand. Now, I've already entered my name, and what did the system do with it? It basically forgot it. It didn't do anything. If I now wanted the system to know my first name or my last name, it doesn't know it because it hasn't finished the function, and it doesn't store it anywhere, and it didn't show it on the screen. Here what we see on the screen is what I entered, but not what the system has. Well, one way to do this would be to incorporate it inside a print statement. So, if I enclose all of this inside print, as we saw in the explanation at the beginning of this lecture, we're going to put print here. We're going to select the whole input function and we're going to press the opening brackets, and this automatically creates the closing brackets as well. Observe what is going to happen now. If I run this, it says, tell me your name. I'm going to put here Federico. I hit enter. And after it appeared here, as I wrote it, it showed it on the screen. Why? That's because it executed in the order from the inside out. First the input, and once I entered it, then I continued typing the print, and it printed whatever I typed. And this is one way of displaying it. If I want to display a sentence with my name on it, can I do that? Well, remember that we can concatenate inside print. Then I can put here that what print says is, in quotes, your name is. I leave a space, close the quotes, put the plus to concatenate, and what follows is the input. And this input doesn't need quotes, so the idea is that I can form a sentence here with what the user enters. So we run that as well. It says, tell me your name. I write it. Your name is Federico. The sequence of concatenations that included both a text and a function was completely executed. I would also like to tell you my last name. Then I put, your name is. Let's put another concatenation here. I want a space to be generated. So I open the quotation marks and leave a blank space inside so that there is a separation between the first name and the last name. Now I'm going to ask for the last name. Input, and in the brackets and in quotes, tell me your last name, the colon and the space. And watch before we run this and try to imagine what's going to appear here. We have a print command. So we tell it, please print the following expression, your name is. Then please continue printing, concatenating that with a user input, which is going to be what the user responds to when we ask, tell me your name. So that concatenates please with a space, a single space. Then please concatenate with another user input that's going to be what the user answers when we ask, tell me your last name. It has logic to it. So let's see if it works. Let's run this with Shift F10. It asks me my name and the program does nothing more than that. It just waits. So I'm going to tell it again that my name is Federico. And we're going to hit enter. So it did not advance with the printout as it did before. Now he waits for me to continue giving him the information he needs to make the printout. And my last name is Garay. And now, when I hit enter, it is formed. Your name is Federico Garay, in perfect English, with perfect spaces between each of the words. The end user, when he sees this sentence, cannot distinguish if it is a string or if it is composed of a concatenation. So it has worked as expected. Sometimes, and although it is not necessary, you can also enclose these inputs within brackets, just for the purposes of making it easier to read this concatenation, and visually we can understand that there are some things here that are separate from the others. So again, I thank you very much for joining me in this lecture, and Phil will now be waiting for you in the next one.
The most awaited moment of your first day of study has arrived. You are going to create your first solo program, and you are going to do it applying everything you have learned throughout this day. Imagine this situation. Your best friend has started a brewery and has everything ready. His product is fantastic. It has body, good flavor, good color, and just the right level of foam. But it lacks an identity. He can't think of a name for his beer that would give it a unique and original identity. So you come to him and say, "Don't worry, I'm going to create a program that will ask you 2 questions and then tell you what to name your beer." It's as simple as that. I know that in the real world we wouldn't need to develop a software just to ask it 2 questions, but until we learn a bit more functionality, well, our programs are going to have to stay in the realm of simplicity. Yet, if you're just starting out, this is going to be quite a challenge. You're going to create Python code that asks your friend to answer 2 questions that require a single word each, and then displays those combined words on the screen to form a creative brand. You can use any questions you want. The idea is for the outcome to be original, creative, and even funny. And if you want to add some difficulty to your challenge, I suggest you try to have the name of the beer printed in quotation marks on the screen. Remember that there are different ways for the print function to show the quotes without interrupting the string. And it's also possible to print our text in at least 2 lines using line breaks within the code. Well, try to do it on your own, and if it gets complicated, don't worry, we will solve it together in the next lecture. Cheers and good luck. Did you make it? Did you have any complications? Did something give you more trouble than you expected? Well, if you made it, congratulations. And if not, don't worry about it. It is normal to encounter difficulties when we are left alone in front of the code.
And next, we're going to create our solution from scratch. And when I say from scratch, I mean from scratch of the file. So, let's open our column again so we can select our folder, which in this case is called Python, remember? And I've saved it on my desktop. Here, I right-click to choose a new file. And this is going to give us the opportunity to create the name of the file, which I'm going to name Brewery, because it's to create the brand of my beer. And I don't have to forget to put the .py, so the system knows it's a Python code. So we press enter. Our file is created. And here we're looking at the inside of the Python folder. This file we're seeing is already open here. So we can start writing code directly into this file. We're going to choose the column to see a little bit better. Now my way of solving this is going to be to start by expressing what it is that I want to be printed on the screen. And the prompt that gets printed on the screen is "the name of your beer is," and then the name of the beer. So let's do that. So print is the command for something to be displayed on the screen. I'm going to put it as I expect it to be displayed. So we open the quotation marks and we say, for example, "the name of your beer is," and then comes the name. But since we don't know it, we're going to put, for example, word 1 and word 2, all in a row. Now remember that we want these 2 words, the name of the beer, to appear in quotation marks. So we select it completely and put single quotation marks so that it appears just like that. Well, we already have what we need to be displayed. Now let's design the structure of how we want it to be displayed. We want to display first a complete string that says the name of your beer is. That leaves this space and shows this first quotation mark. And up to here we know what we have. Beyond that, no, because we don't know the words yet. So here we're going to close the string with double quotation marks. Notice now that I'm getting the following as an error. Let's leave a space to put the plus, which means concatenate with. Well, with word 1, which we don't know yet. After word 1, we're going to need a space to separate both words. So we're going to concatenate here with a space between quotes. It will be a string containing only a space. But we're going to put another plus sign to concatenate with word 2. And then we need this last single quotation mark to appear. And for that, we need to transform it into a string that's going to be concatenated. And here we can see it all very well. So we zoom in and you can see, maybe this is a little confusing, but what we have here is a double quote, a single quote, and a double quote to generate a string that contains only one single quote. So as you can see, if I get out of this form of this line, the system is understanding everything just fine, except for word 1 and word 2, which gives me an error because Python says, what is this? I don't know where to get this word 1 and word 2. If it were in quotes, Python would know that it's a string, but it's not. So where do we have this? Well, we're going to create it, and now we're going to replace these words. So we need two inputs. A first input that asks him something for the user to say a random word, which is going to be the first part of the beer brand. And then we need to ask him a question that we can answer with, for example, the name of a city. And we're going to say, what city would you like to visit? So we close the question, put a colon and leave a space. That will be the first input we need to replace word 1. For word 2, another input asking him, for example, something that he can answer with a colour. And it will be something like, what is your favourite colour? Here you can get a little bit creative, generate as many questions as you want. The answers can be funny. This is an exercise. You have to have fun. So get creative. Well, we already have the two pieces of code we need to replace these words, and we can do it. I'll select the first one, I'll cut it with Ctrl X, and then we're going to replace it here with Ctrl V. And we're going to do the same thing with the second input that's going to go here in place of word 2. And now we have the complete sentence. Another thing I'd like to do here is to add a line spacing so that the answer looks to be on many different lines. For now, we're going to run it to see what it looks like. Note that if I now want to run this with Shift F10, that will be executed. It is not a file called brewery, but this file is called first project, which is what we've been working on throughout this whole day. And probably if you're following my steps, you also have here first project. So we can't use this triangle to run it, nor can we use Shift F10, as you see here in the shortcut, because that would execute this other first project. So we'd want to change it to brewery, but if we open here, it's not loaded yet. There's the main and then there's the first project. The way to add brewery here for a run option would be to come to run, and instead of going, as we're always going to the first one, which is Shift F10, we're going to do this other run, which is with Alt Shift and F10. When we execute this one, it's going to give us a choice of which files that exist in this project are the ones that we want to execute. And in this case, it is brewery that is going to be executed as soon as we select it. And in fact, here we have it. So before advancing, I want you to see that now brewery appears in this drop down and we can choose it to make the execution from now on with Shift and F10. Well, let's come to the code. And here it says, what city would you like to visit? Well, look, the truth is that I'm dying to visit Barcelona, so let's put this. And what's your favourite colour? Let's say it's purple. Now, yes, it tells me that the name of my beer is Barcelona Purple. Great, I have my answer. So the next step in the challenge, to add a bit of complication, was to have this separated into two different lines. So how can we do that? On one hand, we could do it with different print lines, but if we want to do it all at once, I'm going to make use of the backslash and N, which stands for new line, as we learned throughout this day. So after it says the name of your beer, we're going to put here, instead of a space, a backslash with an N. This tells it to jump lines. So the second line is going to say is and the full name. And we're going to make it so that after this line with the quotation mark ends, it will generate a backslash N, that is a new line, and it will say, I don't know, congratulations, or whatever. With this, we would already have 3 lines. So we run it. Do Shift F10, now yes, we can do it. What city would you like to visit? Well, I've changed my mind. Now I want to visit London. And it tells me that my favourite colour is, let's put yellow. It's not, but we put it for a change. And on 3 different lines we have, the name of your beer is London Yellow. Congratulations. And that's how we've done it. If you've made it before watching this lecture, congratulations. And if you've achieved it by watching this lecture, it is equally valid because it is a way to learn and see how someone else has solved it. The code may seem very simple up to this point, but when we get on our own and we are left without the instructor, we get our books burned and sometimes we need a little help. So it's perfect. You're here and I congratulate you for being here, finishing your first day. If you did it in a different way, that's valid too. And of course it is, because in programming there are many ways to achieve the same result. And then, of course, some may be more efficient than others, more economical than others, more elegant, but the point is at this stage of the course is that you have been able to do it. So I thank you for following me throughout the solution of this project, and I recommend that you don't miss the next lecture, which is a very special lecture. Seriously, I'll see you there.